Sometimes the very moment you become most grounded is also the moment the narcissist trembles the most. Not because you are angry, but because you no longer react, no more pleading, no longer letting them define your worth. And when control starts slipping from their hands, they will not quietly walk away. They will launch their final dirty blow. It won't be a genuine apology. It won't be true remorse. It will be a carefully staged performance aimed directly at the very qualities you've just rebuilt. Your compassion, your tolerance, your desire to heal. They will try to twist your boundaries into cruelty, your peace into coldness, your voice into arrogance. The single goal to make you doubt your own light and reopen the door you've already closed. Watch for the signs. A sudden crisis, right when you're finally at peace. Nostalgic reminders of the good old days, repeated over and over. Little needle-like phrases aimed at your kindness. Only you can help me. You've changed. You're not as warm as before. All of it is designed to pull you out of your clear present and back into the old role, one who carried their emotions for them. But today, you are no longer that person. You have the right to see someone's pain without setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. You can be gentle and firm at the same time. You can care without going back. If you've ever felt the weight of the final dirty blow, this is where you learn to dissolve it, with clarity, with self-respect, and with a heart that stays warm but no longer exploited. Let's begin. 1. When your light makes them panic. There comes a moment on the awakening journey when you suddenly realize you no longer tremble before them, you no longer try to explain, you no longer need to be understood. You no longer seek to prove your worth to anyone. You stand there silent, steady facing someone who once made you feel small, and you realize your silence now carries more power than any words. That moment when your inner light begins to shine is the moment the narcissist feels their deepest fear. They are losing control. A narcissist doesn't fear your weakness. They fear your awakening. Because when you are weak, you are their source of energy. When you are confused, they feel powerful. When you need them, they feel alive. But when you start to awaken, when you lift your head and see your own light, it terrifies them. Not because you threaten them, but because your very presence forces them to face the truth about themselves, and that is what they cannot bear. Your light is a mirror. Every step of your growth is a crack in the wall of illusion they built. When you smile without needing their approval, when you are happy without their presence, when you choose silence over reaction, they see most clearly the vast emptiness within themselves. The power of a narcissist never lies in real strength, but in their ability to make you doubt yourself. Once they lose that power, their entire false world begins to crumble. For the narcissist, love was never a genuine exchange. It was an invisible contract, one in which you traded your freedom for the illusion of care. They never sought a partner. They sought a speaking mirror, someone to reflect back the perfect image they wanted to believe about themselves. You were not allowed your own feelings, opinions, or boundaries. You had to smile, listen, endure, and orbit them like a planet around the Sunday. But when you realize that the true sun shines from within you, nothing terrifies them more. When your inner light rises, they feel as though they are staring directly into the darkness they've spent a lifetime avoiding. They don't understand that light. It feels like a silent accusation. It whispers, "I see you. I know you are not powerful. You're just a wounded child hiding your fear beneath arrogance." And that truth drives them mad. They will try to attack that light not with violence, but with doubt, guilt, and manipulation. You will hear them say, "You've changed. You're not the person I fell in love with anymore." Or, "I miss the old you, so gentle, so understanding, so caring." These seemingly harmless lines are emotional needles designed to make you question your own growth. They want you to feel that strength is wrong, that self-love is selfish. They want you to believe that only the obedient, quiet, and compliant version of you is worthy of love. But no, you haven't changed for the worse. You're returning to your truest self, a soul that knows its limits, that loves without self-destruction, that gives without losing itself. That light is the result of a long, painful journey, one in which you've walked through layer after layer of wounds to find freedom within. And that is exactly what the narcissist cannot bear. You've become the one mirror they can no longer manipulate. They will try to strike back with tears, with pity, with sweet words laced in desperation, because in despair, a narcissist always returns to what they do best, playing the victim. They'll speak of the past, of memories, of how happy we once were. But what they miss is not love, it's power. They don't miss you. They miss the feeling of being the center of your world. And when that's gone, they feel as if they're dying. Your light exposes the truth. They were never strong, only skilled at pretending. They never truly loved you, only craved the worship. When you become independent, confident when you say no without fear, they realize you've moved beyond their reach. And that's when the real panic sets in, not because they've lost you, but because they've lost the version of themselves reflected in your eyes. But you no longer blame them. You don't need to hate them to be free. True light doesn't fight darkness, it simply shines. Every time you choose calm over reaction, you strengthen the flame within. Every time you choose silence over argument, you reclaim your power. Every time you choose self-love over saving others from themselves, you step one more pace out of the narcissistic maze. Your stillness becomes the loudest declaration. I no longer live in your story. Oh, you no longer need to prove you are right, good, or worthy of love, because those truths never required proof. They only needed to be lived. When you live them, you become the embodiment of freedom itself, the one truth a narcissist cannot stand, yet cannot destroy. They will withdraw, but not because you hurt them. They retreat because your light forces them to see their own emptiness, and that is unbearable. And you, the one who walked through the storm, will now stand in your own light. Not the blazing light of triumph, but the gentle radiance of peace. A light that needs no recognition, no applause, only to live, to shine, and to protect itself with the same love you finally found within. And then you'll understand. True light never frightens anyone. It only makes the unhealed shadows tremble before themselves. 2. They don't know how to love, they only know how to perform. There's a brutal truth few dare to admit. Narcissists don't know how to love. They only know how to play the role of someone who does. Every promise, every glance, every touch is calculated not to connect, but to possess. Their love isn't a gentle stream. It's a dazzling stage where they are the star, and you are merely the light that makes them shine. When you first enter their life, you don't meet a real person. You meet a character carefully constructed. They read you like a book. Every weakness, every fear, every longing to be loved becomes a prop in their script. They make you believe you found a soulmate, someone who understands you better than anyone. But that isn't empathy, it's cold observation, the preparation for control. A narcissist doesn't love you for who you are. They love you for the reflection you provide. They need you as a perfect mirror, one that validates the lies they tell themselves that they are lovable, important, extraordinary. The real you with your flaws, your fatigue, your pain is never welcome in their story. You are expected to be perfect, never complain, never tire, never demand, never draw boundaries. Their love isn't an emotion, it's a performance. They have memorized every expression they need. When to smile, when to cry, when to act vulnerable to melt your heart. They can cry when criticized, but those are not tears of remorse, they are tears of strategy. Each drop whispers, "Forgive me, I'm the victim here." And when you open your arms to comfort them, they win control restored. To them, love is not a union of souls. It's a power struggle. They love when they are admired, and they resent when you see their weakness. They crave attention, but fear real intimacy, because intimacy requires exposure, honesty, vulnerability. And beneath all their roles lies a terrifying void, the fear of being nothing at all. When they say, "I love you," what they truly mean is, "I need you to feel real." When they say, "I miss you," what they mean is, "I miss being adored by you." When they say, "I can't live without you," what they're really saying is, "I can't stand not being the center of your world." In their world, love means possession, care means control, and sacrifice means emotional manipulation. They know how to make you believe you are the one. They'll glorify you as a savior. You made me believe in love again. But the moment you express real emotion, the moment you ask for respect, they turn cold. You become too sensitive, too demanding, hard to please, all because you dared to break the script they wrote for you. Narcissists are master actors. They can play any role to win trust. The victim, the repentant soul, the lost wanderer. They'll tell you tragic stories of childhood pain and heartbreak to awaken your compassion. And you, with your soft heart, will think, maybe they just need love. But the truth is, they don't want healing. They want endless forgiveness. Each time you forgive, they learn something, that they can hurt you without losing power. Each time you give in, they see your boundaries stretch further. And so the play continues, only you don't know you're in it. You think you're in love, but you're acting in a tragedy designed to make you forget yourself. But there's one thing they never foresee. The performance cannot last forever. Truth, no matter how long it's buried, eventually surfaces. One day, you start to feel empty. You realize that despite giving all your love, you still feel cold. Despite trying your hardest, you still feel unseen. You look into their eyes and see no light, only a mirror reflecting your own despair. And that's when it hits you. They never loved you. They only played the part of someone who could. That realization hurts like nothing else. It shatters the world you believed in. But from that wreckage, a new flame begins to rise. The flame of awareness. You start noticing what you once ignored, how they only care when they need something, how their apologies are just another means of control, how they use silence to punish you until you apologize for their mistakes. And you see it clearly now, that love was never real. It was a stage set up to make you forget yourself. At that point, you have two choices. Keep playing the role or walk off the stage. If you walk away, they'll react violently. They'll try everything to pull you back, sweet words, tears, promises to change. But remember, even the best actor can't perform if the audience leaves. Once you stop believing, the show ends. And that's when you return to reality, where love isn't a negotiation, where emotions aren't weapons, where kindness isn't exploitation. You begin to relearn love, the kind that's honest, unconditional, and unscripted. The narcissist will call you cruel, cold, heartless. But the truth is, you are simply choosing reality over illusion. And there is nothing nobler than that. 3. The reality reversal tactic. When the weak pretend to be the victim, in a narcissist's world, truth is never what matters. For them, the core issue isn't who's right or wrong, it's who controls the story. So when you begin to awaken, when you stop getting swept up in their old blame games, they will pull out one of their most sophisticated weapons, reality reversal. This is when the one who hurt you suddenly becomes the victim of their own tale, and you, the one who endured, are recast as the heartless, cruel one. This tactic doesn't start with shouting, but with fabricated frailty. A sigh, a sorrowful look, a trembling voice narrating the pain you've caused them. They say, I just wanted to be loved. Why did you change? Or, you've hurt me so much, do you even realize? On the surface, those sound like the words of someone in pain. But if you listen with a clear mind, you'll hear manipulation wrapped in the language of weakness. The essence of reality reversal is role swapping. When they can't control your behavior, they'll try to control your feelings. They make you believe that you are the problem, that you've become too rigid, too selfish, too inhuman. They twist your acts of self-protection into evidence of your cruelty. And if you don't recognize the tactic, you'll tumble back into the same old net, feeling guilty for living authentically, ashamed for setting boundaries, and, in the end, apologizing to the very person who hurt you. This is the apex of the psychological game, making you weaken yourself. Narcissists understand kind hearts very well. They know you don't want anyone to suffer. They know you empathize deeply. They know you soften when you see tears, and so they perform. Not to be forgiven, but to reclaim control over your emotions. Watch how they do it. When you are silent, they call you cold. When you speak the truth, they call you harsh. When you withdraw to protect yourself, they say you're abandoning them. In their eyes, you're not allowed to win. Every move you make will be distorted to fit the script they've written. That's why the only way to win this game is not to play. Narcissists can't live in objective reality. They require a reality editor to meet their emotional needs, one where they're always good, wise, wounded. They need a perpetrator to justify the suffering they create, and that person is you. If they can provoke your anger, they win. If they can make you cry, they win. If they can make you feel guilty and come back, they win. Because at that point, you've stepped back onto the stage they direct. When they feign weakness, don't mistake it for love. It's a survival strategy. A narcissist is only weak when they've lost control. Their tears aren't connection, they're weapons. Each drop is a rope binding you by emotion. They make you believe that if you leave, they'll collapse. But the truth is, they don't collapse. They simply find a new supply, another person, to continue the story. I'm a victim of people who never loved me. End quote. In their world, everything is inverted. Violence is called love, control is called care, silence is called maturity, and truth is labeled cruelty. If you're not careful, you'll start asking yourself, was I really too much? But remember, someone who truly loves will not make you doubt your worth every time you set a boundary. Only a manipulator calls self-respect a betrayal. Reality reversal is born of fear. They can't bear the thought of being seen, so they distort your image to protect their false self. They make you the enemy to avoid facing that they are the source of their own suffering. So don't try to prove the truth to them. In their mind, there's no room for reason. Every piece of evidence you offer just builds another wall. Every argument only fuels their game. The only way out of this hallucination is to stand outside the story they're writing. You don't need to say they're wrong. You only need to not participate. Not with contempt, but with the calm of someone who understands the rule. Truth does not require their acknowledgement to exist. Let them play the victim of you. Only in their virtual world can they keep control of anything. You, having stepped out, need only live honestly in your present. Do not let their words make you forget how far you've come to find this peace. And yes, one day they'll tell your story to others, with every detail twisted. They'll say you are cruel, selfish, ruthless. Don't react. Every word is just smoke to mask one truth. They're desperately searching for a new audience now that you've left. They need listeners. You only need freedom. Reality no longer needs to be reversed, because now you see clearly. You know who's telling the truth and who's performing. You understand that the counterfeit weakness doesn't need saving, it needs boundaries. And you know that sometimes kindness isn't staying. It's leaving, so the other person must finally face their own darkness. When you stop reacting, when you're no longer led by counterfeit tears, when you refuse to let their words define your worth, you break their spell. A narcissist doesn't fear your anger, they fear your calm. Because in that calm, they no longer hold center stage. And in that silence, you'll feel a deep truth. You were never cruel, you simply stopped believing the illusion. You never harmed anyone, you merely returned emotional responsibility to its rightful owner. You're not cold, you're learning to be warm to yourself first. 4. When you are silent, they hear the collapse. There is a kind of silence that isn't avoidance, but a declaration of strength. A silence not because you don't know what to say, but because you no longer need to say it. After months or years of arguing, explaining, crying, pleading, you finally realize a narcissist doesn't want to understand you. They only want to win. So you choose silence. And in that moment, something strange happens. They begin to fear. Because your silence isn't just the absence of sound. It's the collapse of an entire power system they built. In a relationship with a narcissist, your words are their fuel. They need your reactions to feel alive. Every explanation you give empowers them. Every reaction you offer charges their batteries. Every attempt to persuade gives them a new reason to play. But when you go silent, when you stop falling into the trap of words, tears, and emotion, they suddenly lose the source that feeds their illusion. Silence is the moment the mirror shatters. The narcissist who lives by reflection now faces emptiness. There's no one left to blame, no one to control, no one to react so they can feel they're winning. Inside them, an inner collapse begins, a panic they will never admit. They call it your change. They say you're cold, heartless, selfish. But what terrifies them isn't that you've changed, it's that you're no longer within their control. Narcissists exist by script. They need lines, an opponent, a co-star to keep their play going. When you are silent, you step off the stage. The lights go out, the audience disappears, and they're left with only one thing: themselves. But themselves is what they've spent a lifetime fleeing. Without someone else to blame, they must face the hollow darkness within, and they fear that more than death. Your silence is a mirror that reflects the truth. They never had real power, only power borrowed from your reactions. In your silence, their words lose meaning. They try to trigger you with pity, with rage, with familiar lines. I just want to talk. Why are you treating me like this? You've really changed. You're not who you used to be. But you don't answer. And it is precisely your lack of response that drives them mad. A narcissist cannot bear silence because silence is the language of truth. It needs no justification, no proof. It simply states, the game is over. In their mind, your silence sounds like a tower crashing, one built of lies, of the illusion of control, of the belief that they could govern another's emotions forever. When you stop participating, that structure falls apart. And in that moment they realize it only ever existed because you once believed in it. A narcissist can endure hatred, even insults, but not indifference. Indifference says you're no longer important. For them, that is the harshest punishment. You're not punishing them, you're removing their last power, the right to live rent-free in your mind. They'll try everything to break the silence: feigned illness, feigned pain, feigned remorse, feigned collapse. They will turn everything into tragedy just to drag you back into dialogue. But remember, each reaction resurrects their power. Every reply, every explanation, every conversation is a fresh cord binding you to their web. And narcissists never tire of that game. They live on the energy you expend. True silence is not the Cold War. It is inner peace. It is choosing not to participate, not to argue, not to fix anyone anymore. It is your way of saying, I don't want to hurt anymore. And that is what makes them tremble. Because they see that, for the first time, you truly see them. And no one can control the person who has seen the truth. In that silence, you begin to hear a different sound, the whisper of your own soul. The voice that was once drowned out by arguments, tears, and torment. It says, at last we are free. Your heart feels heavy, but it is no longer pain, it is the weight of truth. From there, you begin rebuilding yourself, not as a reflection for anyone, not to please anyone, but simply to become yourself. A narcissist hears your silence as a death knell for their illusion. They may call you cruel, but what they're naming is their own pain at losing control. They may say you abandoned them, but in truth they're in despair because for the first time they must face themselves without a mirror. And that more than any punishment is their true collapse. And you don't need to gloat, you don't need to win, because the real victory is peace. No shouting, no resistance, no retaliation. You only need to keep your silence with compassion and clarity. Compassion, because you understand they act from fear. Clarity, because you know their fear is no longer your responsibility. When you reach that silence, you are no longer just someone who escaped a toxic bond. You are someone free within. Your silence isn't a period. It's a doorway to a new world where you no longer need to prove, to be understood, or to save anyone. You simply live and let your light spread, quietly, steadily, needing no approval. And then, at some point, when they look back, they realize the silence they once scorned was the thunder of truth. It didn't kill them, it only destroyed the throne they built on your fear. And you, within that very silence, become the echo of freedom, not through words, but through being. 5. The final dirty blow, a manufactured crisis. There comes a point in your healing journey when you think you've made it through calm, strong, free when the narcissist returns. Not with words of love, but with a meticulously staged crisis. It's the final dirty blow, the last strike of a desperate soul. When every other tactic has failed manipulation, blame, pity, rage, they deploy their ultimate weapon, tragedy. Narcissists know exactly what moves you. They know your heart is soft, that you can't turn away from someone in pain, that you once believed love meant staying when the other person needed you most. And precisely when you are most at peace, most settled, most focused on your own life, they strike at that sacred tenderness. A message in the middle of the night. I've been in an accident. A choked up call. I'm losing everything. A desperate plea. No one understands me. Only you. Every bit of it is calculated. Not to reconcile, but to drag you back into the chaos you just escaped. This is the last attack of someone who's lost control. A fabricated tragedy designed to activate your savior instinct. They know how to rekindle your memory of who they used to be. That fragile, wounded person who once made you believe you could heal them. But this time, you need to see clearly. They don't want saving. They want to reclaim control by making you feel guilty. The narcissist understands they can't win by force, so they choose the role of victim. They may become the sick one who needs care, the unemployed one who needs help, the one betrayed by the whole world. They craft a sorrowful narrative so persuasive that you forget you were the one who was hurt. They make you believe that if you turn away, you are heartless. If you don't help, you're cruel. And in a matter of moments, they turn your goodness into chains. This is emotional manipulation at its most refined, not fear-based, but compassion-based. They know that for someone who has loved deeply, who once wanted to save, who put others before themselves, the feeling of abandoning someone in pain can be worse than being insulted. And so you go back, not out of love, but out of pity. Not out of trust, but out of guilt. And that is exactly what they want. They don't need your love, they need your reaction. Because reaction is fuel. In their game, every time you care, you feed the wound they're determined to keep open. Every "are you okay" tells them they still have a hold on you. Every "do you need anything" shows them you haven't fully stepped out of the savior role. The final dirty blow isn't a single act, it's a psychological play. A stage built from emotion, where you are led by pity rather than reason. If you don't recognize it, you'll fall again not because you are weak, but because you are exceedingly kind. Narcissists rarely beg out of remorse. They beg because they know it's the one language you won't resist. They know how to make you believe, if I leave now, I'll carry the blame. They turn your firmness into cruelty, your boundaries into guilt, your peace into proof of indifference. But in truth, it's just panic disguised as feeling. Inside them, one thing is cracking, the illusion of power. A narcissist cannot bear helplessness. They believe they can control everything and everyone through smiles, tears, promises, and guilt. When you stop reacting, that illusion collapses. To save it, they'll stage an entire tragedy, a life falling apart, just to force you to come back and stitch it together for them. This time, remember, not every cry comes from real pain. Some tears are born from a manipulator's failure when they realize you're no longer a puppet. They don't cry because they've lost you. They cry because they've lost the power you once gave them. So when their tragedy knocks on your heart, pause, breathe, and ask, am I helping them or betraying myself? If the answer is the latter, then you already know what to do. True compassion is not bending to carry another's pain. It is standing firm, so they must face their own lessons. They won't understand this right away. They'll keep acting, keep testing, keep spinning new versions of the same crisis. But when you remain calm, without anger, without pity, without responding, they will slowly realize the game is over. No more audience, no more opponent, no more supply. And then they will be forced to face themselves, the very thing they fled all their life. As for you, the one who chose not to go back, you'll discover this. There is nothing more painful than watching someone you once loved destroy themselves. But you'll also see a greater truth. Their self-destruction is no longer your mission to stop. You cannot save someone who revels in their victim role, and you are under no obligation to stay in a play just so they can have an audience. Keep your kindness, but don't let it become shackles. Keep your compassion, but don't let it pull you away from yourself. If you forget yourself in the mission to save others, you'll return to the very place you fled, the darkness of dependency. 6. True kindness is not setting yourself on fire to light others. There comes a point in your healing journey when you think you've made it through calm, strong, free when the narcissist returns. Not with words of love, but with a meticulously staged crisis. It's the final dirty blow, the last strike of a desperate soul. When every other tactic has failed manipulation, blame, pity, rage, they deploy their ultimate weapon, tragedy. They know precisely what touches your heart. Your softness, your inability to turn away from pain, your old belief that love means staying when the other person needs you most. And just when you are most peaceful and grounded, focused on your own life, they target that sacred tenderness. A midnight text. I had an accident. A choked call. I'm losing everything. A desperate plea. No one understands me, only you. Every detail is calculated, not for reconciliation, but to pull you back into the chaos you escaped. It's the final offensive of someone who's lost control, a counterfeit tragedy designed to trigger your rescuing instinct. They know how to resurrect your memory of who they used to be, fragile, hurting, the one you believed you could heal. But this time, see it clearly, they don't need saving. They want to reassert control through your guilt. Unable to win by power, they choose the role of victim. The ailing person who needs care, the jobless one who needs help, the soul betrayed by everyone. They craft a sorrowful story so convincing you forget you were the one who was harmed. They make you believe that turning away makes you heartless, not helping makes you cruel. In moments, they turn your goodness into chains. This is manipulation at its most sophisticated, not by fear, but by your compassion. They know that for someone who loved deeply, wanted to save, and put others first, the feeling of abandoning someone in pain is worse than any insult. And so you return, not out of love, but pity, not out of trust, but guilt, exactly as they intended. They don't need your love, they need your response. Response is fuel. In their game, every time you care, you feed the wound they insist on keeping open. Every "are you okay?" proves they still have you. Every "do you need anything?" shows you haven't fully left the savior role. The final blow is not a single act, it's a theater of the mind. A stage made of emotions, where pity guides you instead of reason. Miss the signs, and you'll fall again not because you're weak, but because you're profoundly kind. Narcissists rarely beg out of remorse. They beg because it's the only language you won't resist. They know how to make you believe. If I leave now, I'll be guilty. I blow. They recast your decisiveness as cruelty, your boundaries as guilt, your peace as apathy. In truth, it's panic disguised as feeling. Within them, the illusion of power is cracking. They cannot tolerate helplessness. They believe they can control everything and everyone by smiles, tears, promises, guilt. When you stop reacting, that illusion collapses. To rescue it, they'll stage an entire tragedy, a life in ruins, to force you back to mend it. So remember, not every cry comes from true pain. Some tears are born of a manipulator's defeat when they realize you're no longer a puppet. They don't cry because they lost you. They cry because they lost the power you once handed over. When their tragedy knocks, pause, breathe and ask, am I helping them or betraying myself? If the answer is the latter, you already know what to do. True compassion isn't bending down to carry another's pain. It is standing still, so they must face their own lesson. They won't grasp this at once. They'll keep acting, testing, inventing new versions of the same crisis. But if you remain serene without anger, without pity, without responding, they will slowly realize the game is over. No audience, no opponent, no supply. And then they must face themselves the very confrontation they've avoided forever. You, choosing not to return, will see another truth. Nothing hurts more than watching someone you once loved destroy themselves. Yet their destruction is no longer yours to stop. You cannot save someone who delights in their victimhood. You are not required to stay in a play just to give them an audience. Keep your kindness, but don't let it become shackles. Keep your compassion, but don't let it pull you away from yourself. If you lose yourself while trying to save others, you'll end up back where you fled, the darkness of dependence. 7. When you keep your peace, they lose their power. There comes a phase on the awakening journey when everything grows strangely quiet. No more emotional storms, no more tears, no more urge to prove, to answer, to clarify. You no longer react, no longer rage, no longer hurt. And it's precisely in that moment when you hold peace in your heart that the narcissist loses all the power they once had. They used to control you through chaos. They knew how to ignite arguments, how to say things that tightened your chest, how to make you doubt yourself. They once controlled your heartbeat with calculated silence, stirring waves of emotion just to make you react, to make you rush over, to make you prove you still cared. But now, you're no longer swept along. You look at them quietly, the way you watch a play you've seen too many times. You know exactly when they'll cry, when they'll rage, when they'll feign weakness. And the strange thing is, you no longer feel angry. You only feel light. A narcissist cannot exist in a field of peace. Peace is something they don't understand, can't touch, and can't break. They were raised in chaos, live on drama, and breathe in extremes. They need conflict to feel alive. They need someone's reaction to feel important. But when you stop reacting, when you refuse to be pulled into the spiral, their world collapses in silence. They suddenly discover that the power they thought was theirs was only power you had unconsciously handed over. Your peace is a withdrawal of energy. It isn't loud, dramatic, or declarative. It simply says, I'm not playing anymore. And when you stop playing, they lose the stage, the lights, the audience, the role. The narcissist doesn't know what to do with stillness. They'll try to whip up waves through texts, words, tears, fury, and lines like, you've changed. They'll touch every emotional button that once made you waver. Guilt, pity, duty, memories, fear. But this time none of it works. You hear their words, but no longer with a trembling heart. You observe without judgment. You understand they aren't speaking to be understood, they're speaking to be reacted to. And you choose not to give them that energy anymore. Peace is not escape. It is spiritual maturity. It's the state in which you no longer fight to be acknowledged. You don't need to win inside the story. You don't need anyone to understand why you left. You don't need to prove you're right. You only need to know this. You chose truth, and truth doesn't need applause. When you keep your peace, the narcissist grows confused. They will try everything to make you feel again, by hurting you, by eliciting pity, even by pretending to repent. They cannot bear the thought that you've moved on, because in their mind, you aren't a person, you are a mirror that reflects them as loved, admired, important. But now that mirror no longer reflects them. Instead, it reflects your own light, a light they cannot control. You become living proof that they are not as powerful as they believed. And that frightens them more than any threat. For if you, the one who once trembled and cried and begged, can now be this calm, then everything they built was only illusion. Peace doesn't mean you have no feelings. It means your feelings are no longer controlled by someone else. You still empathize, but you don't pity. You still care, but you don't carry. You still love, but you don't lose yourself. This is the free self, the place where you stand firm in the storm without being swept away. And you realize this peace doesn't come from defeating the narcissist. It comes from ceasing to fight yourself, from stopping the effort to change others, from stopping the need to prove your worth, from stopping the search for external validation. You don't need their apology. You don't need their understanding. You only need to understand yourself, and that is enough. When you keep your peace, you are no longer a victim. You become the sovereign of your own life. You don't need revenge. You don't need karma. You just need to walk on lightly, awake. Because what wounds the narcissist isn't what you say, it's the calm in your eyes when you no longer look at them with fear or hatred, but with understanding. I see you clearly, and I no longer wish to remain in that darkness. That is the moment you are truly free. Free from control. Free from the compulsion to shoulder others' pain. Free from the belief that love equals endurance. Free from the role of healer to those who refuse to change. And free from your former self, the one who thought they had to save someone to be worthy of love. When you keep your peace, the narcissist loses their power, but you need not rejoice in that. True peace knows nothing of winning or losing. It knows only clarity. You see things as they are. A wounded soul, lost in the dark, clinging to power through fear. And you choose not to participate. They will find someone else to continue the game. But this time, you are no longer the audience. You are the one who steps out of the theater, takes a deep breath, and feels light. No more anger, no more resentment, only gratitude. Because thanks to that darkness, you learned how to recognize the light. There comes a moment in the healing journey when you suddenly realize you no longer need to fight. No need to prove, no need to win, no need to make anyone understand or apologize. Because deep within your soul, you finally understand peace itself is the greatest victory. The narcissist was once a distorted mirror, reflecting back your own hidden fragility. They made you question your worth, made you forget that love is not control and kindness is not unconditional sacrifice. But through them, you learned a costly, precious lesson. No one can make you small once you've seen the light within yourself. They thought they destroyed you, but in truth they only helped you shed your old skin. From the ruins of illusion you emerged, stronger, wiser, quieter. You are no longer the one who begged for love. You are the one who radiates it. No longer ruled by fear of loss, but complete from within. Your very presence now is the clearest declaration. I don't need anyone to validate my worth. I already know who I am. And for the narcissist, that moment marks the collapse of all the power they once held. Not because you sought revenge, but because you simply stepped out of their game. No more reaction, no more running, no more clinging, only stillness. And in that stillness, they are left with nothing but themselves. What they fear most isn't losing you, it's being forced to see themselves in the light of truth. As for you, you no longer carry resentment. Every wound has become a sacred carving on the path of awakening. You carry no hatred in your heart, only gratitude. Gratitude that this encounter, however brutal, led you back to yourself. You've learned that compassion does not mean self-immolation, and love does not mean saving someone. You can care for someone and still choose to walk away. You can understand them and still choose silence. You can forgive them and never return. Because forgiveness is not permission. Forgiveness is freedom. Today, as you stand in this field of peace, know this. You have completed a full circle of the soul. From innocence to pain, from pain to awareness, from awareness to freedom, and from freedom to absolute serenity. The narcissist has lost their power, but you have reclaimed your essence. You are no longer a reflection of someone else's light, but the lamp that shines on its own, radiant, sovereign, and free amidst the darkness.